last episode of the series aired today. It's tonight now. And since the last episode, I did design up the first round of prints for the inner fenders. This is the driver's side here. This notch section through the middle there, that's for clearance of the bell crank steering, but I've got it pulled out right now. That's the lower servo horn that I was using before, and we had the upper portion on. But now I'm going to get to the point where we're going to take our laser cut units and weld up our final version. So I'm going to try and do 2 of these, one for me, one for Matt, so I can send it off to him. But we're going to try and get this as low profile as possible in these locations. I've got my 5mm precision ground rod. We're going to TIG one end to one of the longer 24mm servo horns, and then we're going to pin the 20mm on the top. At least that's the plan. So we've got the 5mm precision shaft. It's held in place with a vice grip there. I've got one of the 24mm servo horns placed on top, and it's just below flush there, so I'm going to be able to TIG weld. So I'm going to be able to TIG weld that in place just with a little bit of extra there. And I'm not sure if I'll hit it from the inside or not. If it doesn't need it, it allows me to keep it a little bit tighter to the car. So that's the reason that I don't want to if I don't have to. Okay, change of plans. I'm moving the servo horn down, and I'm going to do a weld on the top first. And then I'm going to take it out of here and I'm going to clean up where that joint is on the lathe. That'll allow me maximum strength and still allow me to get this as tight as possible to the car. I TIG welded all the way around that. Now I'm going to go chuck this up in the lathe and clean up that fillet. You can see the servo horn or bell crank is chucked up in the lathe there. So I'm just going to take the tool, clean up that inside there. Again, that's because that's what's going to rest up against the plates in there, and I want that to be able to go up as far as possible. If there's too much of a fillet, it'll just keep it that far off of the chassis. Took it out of the lathe and looking good. It'll sit a lot closer to the chassis now. Now we're going to go cut off the back side and sand it smooth and then do a little weld on the back. Alright, pieces cut off and ground even. Can't really see the shafts there, but we're just going to do a quick weld. Alright, so we've got the bell crank shaft with the lower servo horn welded on. This is going to be the upper servo horn, and I've already cross-drilled it, as you can see. It's drilled for a 2.1mm, so it'll slip fit a 2mm screw through there. But what we're going to do now is we're going to cross drill this shaft. I've already put a mark on the shaft there where it needs to, the top of this servo horn needs to be. So I can just push it up against the edge of this machinist vise, and hopefully with this servo horn oriented at 90 degrees, I can just use the drill press to locate and then drill through.
Waiting for the bow. Oh yeah, the back though. Here we go. Okay, am I good? Yeah.
Tonight we're going to get that rear cut finally done on the back of the body and do the cut around there to get rid of that final flap. So we've got our front bumper cut down to its final size. We give it a good spray down of simple green.
Hey, Doc.
Hey, what's up, buddy?
What are you doing?
You want to watch? We're gonna do science.
Just the welding process. Ew.
Yeah.
That's a pretty color. See, it took on this weld.
Yeah, I probably just didn't get it as hot, or I left the shielding gaps around it longer.
Could be. Kind of fun, ain't it?
Mm-hmm. Sure, a lot easier than painting. I'll tell you that. And we're back in the studio for the final time before you get to see the finished car at the event. It's gonna be just a last final week of thrashing to get all of the details wrapped up on the Class 1. Class 2, Class 3, you'll see what came about in that week at that time as well, because I don't have much to show you currently, but give you a little bit of a breakdown of exactly where we stand right now and what is left. At the beginning of the video, you saw me fabricate the bell crank of this. That's in there, everything's final, never has to come back out of this car again, is the plan. The front inner fenders are done. Those have been printed, they're in place, and you can't see into that inner front area. There you go. So that's done, and that also facilitates the dash mount. So the dash is in the car for the final time. I used the steering wheel from the VS410 Origin Detail Parts Tree, just an easy drop-in solution. So that finished off the dash. The dash doesn't have any additional detail as far as like gauges being painted or anything like that. It's just pretty plain at this point. Maybe down the road, after the event, after I've relaxed a little bit, we'll come back and kind of revisit some of these things for some detail. Furthermore, in the interior, I designed up a simple transmission tunnel that's been printed and is currently resting in place, needs to be final installed.
And the rear battery cover, seat cover, engine opening area, that is all wrapped up as well. Other than installing the magnets into the rear part, it's all done. So it should work out just fine. Everything should be good to go. I just need to get my magnets pressed into place and that thing will be set. I made an opening in that back area to like install a mesh or something like that, but I think I kind of like it open. So I'll probably leave it that way. I think that it'll still look pretty good. One of the other things that I did is I did make that rear cut to open up the entire back side of the body to give it its final shape. And I'm really glad that I did. I kind of, for some reason, liked that piece back there, but once I got it cut off, I thought it looked so much better. And we also made the cut for where the rear engine opening goes. So the final version, at this point at least, of the wing is installed. This is printed out of that carbon fiber PLA. Matt sent that to me. He had printed those for both of us. So that'll be on there. I still do have to kind of work out the final mounting design, but I'm not super worried about that. I have an idea in my head. Just need to get it executed. All the time in the world for those type of mindsets. Matt, when he sent me the rear wing, he also sent me the translucent red rear taillight assembly. So this will get attached to the body in the rear. We'll get that glued in place, and behind it we'll also get some of the COB or chip on board LED strip. It'll fit perfectly behind it, illuminate the whole thing, and we'll have a little bit of detail in the center section with some text that will go along with the livery. The body has still not been clear coated. That will absolutely happen this weekend. That has to happen. These are some forged carbon parts that I've done in the past. These were for the V-Speed Monthly Mayhem Challenge, and I clear coated those with some very simple kind of Rust-Oleum clear coat. So I'm going to use the same clear coat for this one. Give it just a little bit of that shine, and I know this stuff sticks, and that's all I need to know. It's worked for me once in the past, so I'm gonna roll with it and just shoot this whole thing as well. Now the windshield frame is still just resting on here. It has not been final installed. Another piece that's got to be sanded, smoothed, and clear coated and glued into this body. But for that windshield, I also have the actual windshield portion of it. For the windshield, I designed up a buck that is the proper shape and curve of the actual windshield, insetted a little bit from the frame to give some room for the thickness of the Lexan itself. I 3D printed it and smoothed it really well, which is a rarity for me. And then when I 3D printed it, I printed it with an open back and about 10% infill, and then I backfilled the whole piece with plaster of Paris. I print it with 0 bottom layers, and that's how I get that open style. It's just a lot easier to backfill it with plaster of Paris than it is to print at 100%. And it just helps keep it so that when you put that hot plastic down that you've melted for the vacuum forming process, that it doesn't deform your actual buck. Works really well for me. It's super easy, super quick, keeps everything moving right along. But that worked out really well. I used my little at-home vacuum former, and it's a great tool to have. This still has the overspray film on it, so it's not that clear that it should be, but I need to do just a little bit of modification left before I get it final trimmed and put into place. Matt showed you the headlights in his last episode. I've got my 3D printed bezels here. These are a smoked polycarbonate 3D print. So that's gonna get attached there with a bezel that goes around it. I still have to get the body drilled and the actual headlights mounted so that these illuminate, but that shouldn't take too long. I don't think that those little details are going to be what's going to hold me back. So I need to get the body clear coated before I do that. And well, I'll probably make the cuts first, then clear coat, then get everything attached. It sounds like a logical train of thought for me. Getting into some more of the parts that are getting to the final stage, I did have to take the cage back out and do some final welding underneath of the back side of all of the joints. After I got done welding that all up, I did some at-home titanium anodizing, which I would have showed at the beginning of this video as well. That's a very simple process of some distilled water, a baking soda solution that's dissolved within it, and then you just apply a voltage to the parts. And that's what gives you the anodized titanium look. You can tell on mine that it didn't, take everywhere around the welds, and that's because those areas would have oxidized a little bit. If I would have gone in and super cleaned all of those joints so that there was no oxidation, everything would have been a much more solid and uniform anodizing process. If I had all the time in the world, I would have done that. After the very first part where I noticed it was doing that, I would have stopped and just gone about everything in that way. But for one, I didn't mind it. I thought it gave it a little bit of character. Adding a hint of the blue to the titanium parts I think looks pretty cool, and having some coloring change here and there doesn't bother me in the slightest. I kind of like it. So that's done. Like it or dislike it, it's on there and it isn't changing. You may also notice that the wheels are different. I changed to the new Vanquish KMC Impact wheels, gray with a blue beadlock ring. That's so that it matches the theme of the livery a little bit better, and I think that they look great. Also, while I was doing that wheel swap, I stuffed the Vanquish Falcon Class 1 tires with some Crawler Innovations foam. I bought the 4.25 inch tall foam, and I took the outer tuning ring off of it. I put softs in the front and mediums in the rear. While I had the wheels and tires all off, the front axle got a couple of upgrades. I put some aluminum portal knuckles on there, and also I swapped over to the low offset brass covers. Those came about after I modified my original brass covers to work with the narrower hubs, but we then made that a product, milled those things down so that you could use the most narrow offset wheel you've got to clear what is needed. Same thing that I've got going on here. Did that, and it cut down a little bit in the weight compared to the ones that I had, but they're a production part at least, so everything's nice and easy. I went 225 hubs, both front and rear. I did make sure to cut my front bumper down to a width that those narrow hubs will still satisfy, but just leave a little bit extra there, so in pretty good shape. I would personally like to get that front bumper cut down in here, about another ½ inch per side. Might be something that I do after the event, just because I want it to look how I want it to look, and I only need it to be per the rules for this event. On the underside of the body, I got those filler panels attached. As you would have seen in Matt's last video, I finally got those done and put onto mine as well. Just gives us a nice smooth transition from the skid plate to the slider to the outside. It was a very simple design, but something that I think makes it look a lot better. A big task left on the build, the wiring. Right now, I've got all of the wires just kind of shoved under this side, and that's obviously not what I want, and I need to get to the point where everything is much better handled. So my plan is that when I'm designing up the final body mounts that will replace these parts in here, I'll try and incorporate like an electronics area, to hold the wires, the receiver, and maybe something to, make my on-off button from the hobby wing easy to get to. While I'm doing that wiring, I need to get my headlights, tail lights, and we're gonna do some accent lighting that kind of goes in and around the rear engine bay, just to give it a little bit of glow that'll come out of that rear vent above this area in the back there. A little bit of extra, no big deal. The graphics for my livery are here, so you'll get to see that when we are at the event. You'll probably see Matt's livery in his next, but you won't see mine, which matches his in some way, a little bit, plays off of it at least, in the video at the event. My plan is to do daily updates from the event, just like I normally do. And at this point, I don't think anything's going to be stopping me from accomplishing that. One thing that I haven't really discussed since early in this entire process is that this whole time it has been sitting at full bump, no springs on there. And I don't plan to run this at full bump or droop, as it would be referred to often. So we will be putting springs on this, but we'll be filling the shocks with oil for the weight of the actual car. So the ride height's going to go up a little bit, which you will not have seen, but I'll probably keep it reasonably low, with a spring that isn't too firm. I'm not sure if this video ended up being short or long, but it's all you get for this one. I've got 1 week from right now before I've got to be on a plane to the event. So that's going to conclude the formal process of showing you how we got here. It should be running in the end. Class 2, Class 3, Who freaking knows? If you enjoyed this build, leave a comment. Say anything at all, even if you didn't like it. Say something rude. I don't care. I do a little bit. But with that, if you enjoyed it, hit the like button. Subscribe if you're not already. Hit the notification bell so you see the videos as soon as they get uploaded. I got to get this video done so I can get back to work. Thanks as always for watching. We'll see you on the next one.